At the Christmas homily a few weeks ago, wasn't that long ago, I shared how during the lockdown about a year ago, I got quite hooked up on non-stop news cycles until I just felt overwhelmed by it all, and instead I started binging on the Big Bang Theory. So the days with big gaps in my schedule are kind of long gone, and so has my Big Bang Theory binging. But I have noticed that I now seem to fill every spare moment watching the Murdoch mysteries. Probably what I need more is exercise and the fresh air and talking to people. So it's interesting for me to see how my behavior patterns have changed or adapted over the past year or so. There's strong evidence to suggest that this significant shift in patterns of behavior is actually quite widespread, not just me. And if you like numbers and statistics or evidence, a bit like Detective Murdoch, here's a few I found from a nationwide poll taken in December. It said that 14% of those aged 18 to 34 are struggling with addiction. That's 1 in 7. And 28% are grappling with mental health issues. It says 15% of Canadians have consumed more alcohol this year. And here's the big one. 3 in 10 have gained weight in the past year. Across the world and locally too, addictions do seem to be on the increase. Some are perhaps, traditional addictions, alcohol, drugs, smoking, so often some kind of substance abuse. But some are less obvious and actually more hidden. In my opinion, in the modern world, some addictions or unhealthy dependencies often involve a screen in some way. Most of our phones now are set to measure how much time we spend using them and on which apps. And I tried this last week, and I was quite shocked by how much more time I spend on a screen than I thought. So you may find it interesting to do this. That's an exercise this week too. Maybe you're not addicted in the strict sense of the word, but not many of us can claim not to have developed unhealthy dependencies, or at least risk heading that way. So maybe this is a good time to check or to ask yourself, is there anything beyond your basic needs which you couldn't live without, even for a couple of hours? Perhaps it's not a thing, perhaps it's some other kind of dependency, maybe something affective. Could be perhaps that you, fly into a rage more often than you used to, or you're judging a lot, or you're gossiping too much. Sometimes our addiction could be work. Not all addictions come in a bottle or a syringe. Whatever the case, it's really helpful to be aware of your behavior and any changes in it. So what has changed in your behavior over this past year? Addiction is often sparked by crisis, and the pandemic is a crisis like no other. So as you sense or see any changes in behavior which aren't healthy, do you see a reason behind it? Are you maybe trying to put off a difficult decision or a problem you can't face or a worry that you have? Maybe even a past hurt or pain. Or you may be unsure how to deal with boredom or lack of purpose. In this series of 3 homilies, so this is the second one, we're looking at what seems to be breaking in people's lives over the past few months. Cracks that seem to be appearing and which we cannot simply ignore. Cracks such as conflict at home or even abuse, addictions, mental health issues, isolation. Now, to be clear, the purpose of this message is not to take you on a guilt trip. I've decided to leave the guilt homilies for Lent. So the purpose is quite the opposite. We believe that what is broken can be made whole again. We believe that wherever there are cracks, we can bring in the glue that mends everything, and that's the healing power of Jesus. So what I want to talk about is healing and hope. I want to talk about rising up. Whatever that means for you, whether that means that just a little wake-up call, or whether that means a drastic change in your lifestyle. Whatever the case, this is about healing. And the first step to healing really is awareness. That can be a very sobering exercise, even if you're not prone to guilt. And so ask yourself in these days, maybe just now, is there anything in your life or surrounding your life which seems half dead, paralyzed, not growing at all, almost like it's caught with some kind of fever, unable to move or to lift a finger about it? Do you sometimes feel in you a desire to give more, to serve more? Do you dream of being taken up by the hand and lifted up and out of this fever and paralysis? If that's the case, this is the picture that greets us in today's gospel as we peer into Peter's home and we glimpse his mother-in-law in bed with a fever. People in those times didn't really know how fevers happened, so they assumed that it was the cause of evil spirits. And Jesus goes in and he takes her by the hand and he lifts her up. And as he does that, the fever withdraws. And what emerges instead is the mother-in-law, as she really is. She begins to serve. Jesus resumes the healing on that day. And he does it in the evening, Mark tells us, at sunset. Mark says he cures the sick and he casts out demons. But the detail of that timing in the evening at sunset is important. Sunset was seen as the hour when darkness takes over from light. So it's the hour of the evil spirits. It's the hour when darkness becomes stronger than light. But Jesus demonstrates that he has power over evil even when evil seems to be growing stronger. And he demonstrates he has power over all evil, physical and spiritual. He heals by word and he heals by touch. So his power is total. Jesus has authority over all kinds of evil. And this is how Jesus wants you to know him. Jesus wants you to know him as the one who cannot be engulfed by darkness, as the one who cannot be defeated. His power is higher than any other, and it's the power to heal you. You know, to this day, so many people actually come to know Jesus, not in church or in prayer, but actually when they are immersed in something bad, at their darkest hour, when they've hit rock bottom, when they're in the throes of addiction. To be fair, Mark doesn't speak to us of addictions. He speaks to us instead of demons. Demon, the word comes from Greek, and the root of the word demon is the same root for the word to divide or to separate. So a demon is a divider. Perhaps it fits that some addictions are compared to demons, like the demon drink and so on. Because addictions do separate us. Addictions do separate us from the ones around us, even the ones who love us most. Addictions separate us from God. Addictions separate us from the best version of ourselves. A demon, we see in the gospel, takes over the life of the victims. It takes over even their voice. And that's not too different from addictions, I think, which take over your life and your relationships and hold you prisoner. When you think about it as the person possessed by demons who switches between their voice and the voice of the demon, are they all that different from the victim of addiction who seem to switch between the real them in moments of sobriety and almost a possessed version of themselves when the addiction takes over? Whatever the demon that's in your life or surrounding your life, whether it's a big demon or a small demon, don't you just wish that demon would shut up? And you know, Jesus has the power to do that. In the gospel, Jesus silences the demons, and they have to. It's not even a contest. They surrender to him. He has the power over them. And if Jesus has power over demons, over evil personified, evil at its worst, do you really think that he doesn't have power over your addictions? He has power even over death. If and when we are aware of our addictions or unhealthy dependencies, the challenge is to then turn them over to God, to acknowledge that he has power to heal us if we surrender to him, to truly discover the will to rise again, the desire to break free. Because whatever we're addicted to does control us. We do become dependent on it. Instead, we're only really meant to be dependent on God, not because God is capricious and competitive, but because only he is truly dependable. God is the only healthy dependency we can have. Only he is big enough to fill the void that we try to fill with stuff or with distractions. Addiction may sometimes look like a choice, but in truth what addiction does is it takes away from us the choice. And God wants us always to be free to choose. It's the first story in the Bible. And he always wants you to choose to withdraw from addiction so that the you he made can emerge. This may still feel quite hard at times. Maybe it feels quite hard just now to you. In that case, perhaps, maybe you're feeling a bit like Job in the first reading. It really comes across very clearly that Job is feeling powerless and afflicted and hopeless. He says he's like a slave who longs for the shadow. Slaves and laborers worked in the baking heat, so the shadow meant a reprieve from this captivity. He doesn't even have any hope that he will actually rise. He even asks, "If I lie down, will I rise?" It sounds like he's almost living in his grave. I actually have a lot of sympathy for Job, and the truth is, however, he is at this point also wallowing. He's getting sucked deeper and deeper into despair and into hopelessness. And when that happens, there's going to have to come a point when the wallowing stops. Because the deeper you sink into this quicksand of despair, the harder the rescue operation will be. And even if you feel without power, you are never without will. Our will is the last thing to die with us. And the people whom Jesus freed from demons, they had no power left in them, but they still had the will to be healed. They still came forward. They still sought Jesus. Some of them hunted him down. And so their will, matched with God's power, heals them. So rather than wallow, allow God. Lift your gaze. That voice that tells you that you're unforgivable or you're unworthy because of the pain you caused from your addictions and unhealthy dependencies, that is not the voice of God. And nor is the voice that tells you that the pain caused to you is what now defines you. That's also not from God. That can't be from the one who made you and designed you. The voice of God sounds very different. The voice of God says to us, "Rise up. Here is my hand. Let me lift you up. Let me hold you." And so, lean into that embrace. Go into your arms. Go into God's arms. Even if at first it feels you're wrestling with God, not so much embracing Him, but stay there in His arms. Stay there until the moment you surrender. Because if you stay there, you will surrender. He's kind of stronger than you. So why resist Him? Just as long as you have the will for it. Just as long as you open the door to Him, even just a little crack. So do not underestimate the power of your will. And do not underestimate the power of God harnessed to the power of your will. The power to recover, the power to resist, sometimes the power to rescue. You are not defeated. You will rise again. And may we be a community which does raise others up. May we be the hands of Jesus lifting up those paralyzed by whatever fever. So can we commit to be a space where those suffering from addiction, big or small, find not judgment or distance, but strength, compassion, and a shoulder to lean on for those who are sharing the burden as they try to steady loved ones who are weak just now. And if you yourself conquered addiction to the power of God, consider helping others. Consider sharing your story. Consider being a light to them. Overcoming addiction and unhealthy dependencies, it is about belief, and it is about behavior. It's also about belonging. The biggest crisis for those possessed by demons and then freed by Jesus, the biggest crisis for them was that they belonged nowhere and to nobody. So can we become weak for the weak so that the weak can be saved, as Paul says to the Corinthians in the second reading? So whatever your addiction, whatever your unhealthy dependency, please get help. Please let today be the day when you do that. Seek today the spark that you need to set this in motion. To become aware of what your weaknesses are and to discover your will to be healed. I have no idea what the demon in your life is. Maybe for you, the journey will be short and straightforward. Maybe for you it will be long and very uphill. But your journey is going to start with the first step. And the journey, if you take it with Jesus, will lead to freedom, to wholeness, to healing. This is what Jesus came out to do, from town to town, from home to home. The next home he wants to enter is yours. The next place he wants to heal is you.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my name. The cross has broken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope.
Jesus, you are our living hope. Give us the grace to lay at your feet all those things in our life that separates us from you, all of our addictions, all of the lies we've listened to about our shame and unworthiness, we lay them down at the foot of your cross. Give us the courage to fix our eyes on you, on the cross, and see our addictions and our sins nailed there with you. Help us not to look away from your merciful and loving gaze, so we may reach out to you and let you lift us out of the darkness of addictions. Lift us up out of the darkness of the grave that we find ourselves in. Lift us up, Lord, into your merciful light. With trust, we offer ourselves to you, Jesus.